Good evening. An unsettling return to class today for students at Mount Albion Collegiate. A police command post, a stark reminder of the mass shooting that claimed a man's life and injured 4 others as they were hanging in the parking lot after playing soccer.
Those responsible are still out there. Their actions, according to a police source, believed to be random. CTV's John Musselman joins us live from Etobicoke with the very latest on the investigation. John.
Well, Nathan, we also know that police are looking at a possible pickup truck that crashed not far from the scene. We're also talking to residents here today who are reeling about what happened here. Neighbors living near North Albion Collegiate near Kipling Avenue are still reeling after Sunday night's shooting left 1 man dead and 4 others wounded. Toronto police confirmed the identity of the victim killed as 61-year-old Delroy George Parks. This woman, who did not want to be identified, is a longtime friend.
Kind of sweetest man you'll ever know. He wouldn't hurt a fly. He was just so gentle, you know what I mean? I played dominoes with him.
Police say a group of men were gathered in the parking lot after a soccer game. That's when a dark pickup truck pulled into the lot. 2 suspects got out and opened fire. 4 other men were hit by bullets. They have serious but non-life-threatening injuries, police say.
They were just a group of males that were enjoying the summer air and playing soccer and then taking a break after and hanging out.
Relatives say the men who were fired upon were members of this soccer team. Police say they're concerned about gang violence and have set up a command post beside the school. They've increased patrols in the area. Students returned to classes today, but they admit the gun violence is unsettling.
I've been here for 3 years now. Nothing has happened. And I thought, oh, the stories I've heard, it's just stories. But, I mean, now it's a little bit more real.
Obviously scared because I live like 2 blocks away.
Most of it is targeted. I think it's gang-related stuff, and which is sad, of course.
At the end of the day, we got to remember that, we got to improve our efforts in doing better outreach to get to the young people that are committing these crimes before the gangs get to them.
Investigators have not said if this shooting was targeted or random. And again, the video of the pickup truck was taken not far from the scene here. It did crash into a pole. Looks like 2 suspects got away. There's been no confirmation that that is linked to this shooting, but that's something police are still investigating. Reporting live from the scene, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, John. The province's Special Investigations Unit is continuing its examination of yesterday's police-involved shooting in Scarborough. Police responded to multiple 911 calls mid-afternoon yesterday for a man with a hammer threatening motorists near Ellesmere and Warden. According to the SIU, 1 Toronto police officer fired a single shot and another officer discharged their taser. The unidentified 34-year-old man was rushed to hospital but later died of his injuries. The SIU says an autopsy is scheduled for tomorrow.
Jurors in a Brampton courtroom got an inside look at an alleged terrorist plot today. The Crown's star witness testified in the case of a trio accused of conspiring to shoot up a family-owned restaurant, injuring 5 and killing 1.
And as CTV's John Woodward reports, 1 young man was approached to join. Instead, he went to the police.
Warehouse on Kimball Street in Mississauga was the home of the company TrialLink, which promoted itself with videos on social media.
Welcome to TrialLink.
The Crown has said 3 men involved in that operation, Anand Nath, Suleiman Raza, and Nakash Abbasi, were also raising money for the listed terrorist entity, the Islamic State, or ISIS, and hatched a plot to murder 25-year-old Naeem Akhil and his family at their restaurant Chickenland so he would keep it quiet. Much of that coming from the Crown's star witness, Mikhail Aras, a fellow Muslim who met Abbasi at a mosque years before. Abbasi arranged for Nath to stay in Aras's apartment for about a week before the shooting. On May 29, 2021, surveillance videos show Aras, Nath, and Suleiman arriving in Suleiman's car to that warehouse to pray while the mosques were shut down for COVID-19 precautions. That's where Aras said he overheard a call between Abbasi and Nath saying Nakash was saying if he's ready to go, Anand would respond, yeah, I'm ready to do this for the sake of Allah. The pair left. Surveillance videos show the car driving away. When Aras was shown pictures of the masked man police identified as the attacker that witnesses say jumped into the trunk of a getaway car, Aras said it was the same clothing as Nath. The car returned to the warehouse later that evening, Aras testified. The trunk opens, Anand comes out with his hoodie string tied. His eyes were, I don't know how to describe it, soulless, in shock, wide open. I asked him what happened. He said nothing. We've got to pray. Other photos show Nath's hair, which was once long, had been completely shaved. The following Monday, Arras testified he returned to that warehouse, and Abbasi asked him to swear allegiance to Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi al-Qurashi, who was an ISIS leader from 2019 to 2022. In that meeting, Arras said he learned Anand got sent on a mission to slaughter some Naim guy. Nakash ordered his whole family to get slaughtered. Arras decided he wanted nothing to do with these men, and a short time later, he went to the police. Through Aras's testimony, the trial got a glimpse at a larger plot. He said the group was trying to establish itself in Canada and had a list of names. That's when the prosecutor interrupted him, saying that was beyond the scope of this trial. John Woodward, CTV News.
Still ahead on CTV News, the cost of higher mortgage rates, how some families are stuck between finding a way to pay and losing their homes. But first, here's a live look at the city. Cloudy, but showers are expected to roll through tomorrow as well in the evening. That'll cool things down, but at least it's hot. Feels even hotter with the Humidex. Jessica Smith is here with a look at the current conditions. Hey, Jess.
Hey, and don't let that cloud cover fool you. We still have a really high UV index. You can still get a burn on a cloudy day, so just keep that in mind. I know it can be a little deceiving sometimes, but it is warm out there. We're still dealing with a really high humidex value as we head into the second half of our day. It feels into the mid-30s still as we approach the evening, but the good news is if you don't like the heat, it gets a little better as we head in towards at least the end of the week. We are still seeing some special weather statements in eastern Ontario through Ottawa for the heat. A different story for us here. The criteria is a little different in and around the GTA. Through the islands and Pearson, it's a little cooler through the islands, a little cloudier towards Pearson. Tonight, though, we don't lose any of that warmth. All that heat built up throughout the day, the perfect recipe for some summer thunderstorms. Those details coming up. Right now, it's back over to Michelle.
Thank you, Jess. Just ahead on CTV News, insight into the days and weeks leading up to Toronto's vacant home tax debacle. Natalie Johnson investigates when red flags were raised and why the city didn't put the brakes on thousands of erroneous bills before they were sent out. But first, many Canadians are eagerly awaiting tomorrow's interest rate announcement from the Bank of Canada.
Hopes are high the bank may make the first cut to rates in years, which would be a welcome relief to those struggling to keep up with mortgage payments. CTV's Sean Leathong has more.
With just 30 days before her mortgage is up for renewal, Shauna Wood is afraid of losing her home.
It makes you sick. The worry, it literally makes you sick because we've worked so hard to be first-time homebuyers.
Wood, her husband, and 8 children have lived in their Oro-Medonte home since 2010. They rented for the first 10 years, saving enough to buy the house in 2021.
It was a massive celebration. It was like, oh my goodness, we finally did it. We never thought we were going to be able to do this. Like, wow. And now I feel like we're sitting on the verge of losing everything that we worked so hard for.
Her husband, Dave, works 70 hours a week. 4 of their children have medical conditions that require weekly trips to sick kids. They purchased the home for $800,000 with a fixed rate of 3%. Until now, payments have been manageable, $3,000 a month, half of the family income. Now the renewal offer is a 7.19% interest rate for a monthly payment of $5,100. That's before property taxes, groceries, and medical bills.
Sorry, I get a little bit emotional. What do? You try and find the money.
Finding the money is something many Canadians will have to do. Over the next 2 years, 76% of all mortgages in Canada are up for renewal. In May, Canada's federal bank regulator said real estate secured lending and mortgage risk is the biggest threat to the financial system. And the big 6 banks have put aside $4 billion to help cover bad loans as defaults are expected.
It's really tough on people, you know, like income haven't gone up as much. So they're really struggling to make ends meet.
Mortgage broker Greg Kalangian says these days nearly all renewals are coming with price shock. His job often requires helping customers face the new reality.
Some are actually forced to sell their properties. It's very unfortunate, but they are forced to sell because they cannot afford it. We've seen several of those.
Back at her home, Shauna Woods says they've looked at selling, but prices have climbed too high to buy again, as have rental prices.
8 kids, myself and my husband, that's a lot of people to try and find a home for when we've been here for the last 14 years. This is all some of the kids have ever known is this house.
For now, her oldest daughter is working to help pay the bills, and Shauna is looking into work, but she's frustrated, saying her family passed the stress test to get a mortgage, but interest rates have far exceeded that test. Now they wait, hoping for a cut from the Bank of Canada.
There was just a big disconnect, and I mean, I'm sorry, they don't really have to think about it the way the rest of us do, and it's not right.
And if a rate cut comes, it still may not be enough. Sean Leathong, CTV News.
More tonight on a story we first told you about last night. A Trenton teen with special needs who was found dead at his school.
Today, advocates gathered at Queen's Park to demand the government make changes to ensure this does not happen to anyone else. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris is live tonight with more. Siobhan.
There were a lot of people reaching for Kleenex boxes here at Queen's Park today. Advocates and MPPs say that the government needs to act now to add more resources and rules to protect kids with special needs. The education minister, though, he wants to wait.
How old are you?
A Trenton mother in unspeakable pain at the loss of her son. 16-year-old Landon Ferris died last month at his high school. His seizure disorder made it unsafe for him to sleep alone. But she says Landon's body was cold when it was found in a sensory room at the end of the school day.
I received a text from my son's school.
Too distraught to speak herself, the words of a mother gripped by grief brought strangers to tears.
I pick wildflowers for him alone. We used to pick flowers together. Now I leave them at his grave. I'm broken. My boy is gone. His laugh is a memory. His light snuffed out too soon.
The education minister calls Landon's death a tragedy, but calls for patience.
I want to avert the instinct of making assumptions or what I observed from some of the members opposite of attempting to politicize this issue.
There are demands going back years for more rules around the kind of room Landon was apparently in.
When they could be used and for what reasons and what approvals need to be acquired.
And guidelines around supervision. Lecce says that isn't up to him.
School boards are required to have a protocol in place. We expect them to do so, recognizing that we provide training.
For parents of children with disabilities who've been warning this day would come.
A universal cry of that could have been my kid.
As a community, they say meaningful reforms are needed.
We are insisting that this government immediately commit to providing all children with disabilities safety at school.
A bare minimum, they say.
They know that school boards aren't getting enough. The boards are saying it. Principals are saying it.
For now, no commitment to a cash infusion to support kids with special needs.
There's a commitment based on any recommendations and advice we can receive.
When the investigations into Landon's death are done. Those investigations are being done by the school board and Ontario's coroner. The education minister says urgency is a factor here, but advocates worry that from the coroner in particular, answers could take years. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Siobhan. Grassy Narrows First Nation is suing the federal and provincial governments.
It says both governments have failed to protect their treaty rights and neglected to clean up mercury in their rivers. The chief and council of Grassy Narrows arrived at Queen's Park demanding justice a few hours after they turned to the courts.
It's been over 5 decades of gross neglect, denial, and disregard for Grassy Narrows people.
On Tuesday, the First Nations sued the governments of Ontario and Canada, alleging their treaty rights have been violated through ongoing mercury poisoning.
The Crown has failed to protect the people of Grassy Narrows and their territory from industrial contamination and poisoning.
For those in pain, this suit is a long time coming.
The people of Grassy Narrows have suffered enough.
Our economy's been destroyed. Our way of life has been destroyed.
The chief says this next step is for Grassy Narrows people, present, past, and future.
There's a new generation of young people that are being born every day, and they are, being born to a contaminated river.
Inside the legislature, the opposition urged the government to do the right thing.
Will this government stop the ongoing poisoning of the people of Grassy Narrows today?
No commitments from the Minister of Indigenous Affairs, only support.
One of the first actions we took upon forming government in 2018 was to actually index the mercury disability benefits to inflation.
Next, to an embarrassing incident for City of Toronto staff. More than 100,000 vacant home tax bills mailed to residents who lived in the very properties they were being taxed for.
Now we're learning more about who knew about the problem when and the behind-the-scenes scramble to correct the chaos. CTV's Natalie Johnson has the details.
As hordes of upset residents swarmed the civic centers in the early days of April, angry and anxious about being handed tax bills for money they didn't actually owe, City Hall was scrambling to do damage control on the vacant home tax debacle.
It's a story of disorganization, dysfunction, and disconnected from political reality. Who did what? Who failed to do what? And why were Torontonians stuck with this gigantic canard?
Internal emails and documents obtained by CTV News shed light on the scurry to stem the concern and confusion. The city's customer experience director briefing the mayor and councillors on the enormous impact of the mistake on 311. The city's goal is to answer 80% of calls within 75 seconds. On April 4th, 311 achieved just 13%. The executive director of the division writing in a briefing note that call volumes have doubled and that at one point the average wait time on the tax and utility line has been 55 minutes.
This year's rollout of the vacant home tax was really badly done and caused a whole batch of unnecessary anguish to lots of people.
Meanwhile, questions were swirling over why it hadn't been made clear to the public that they had to declare occupancy status every year. The mayor's office asking for an explanation of the messaging strategy. The then head of city communications outlined that some of the $105,000 advertising budget had gone to TTC posters, paid Twitter and Facebook ads, radio spots, and elevator ads. But the main difference from the less disastrous previous year, no standalone direct mail piece. Quote, this tactic was recommended but was declined due to cost implications. So even if the message didn't effectively get across to the public, why wasn't the sheer number of bills going out a red flag? 176,000 properties deemed or declared vacant for 2023 compared to just 11,000 the year before. On March 15th, the employee amassing the numbers on vacancy data wrote in an email to 4 others. Hi guys, we may expect more than 150,000 undeclared accounts this year, and it would take hours to run the vacant home tax bill.
You might be able to be great at managing the math part, but it doesn't mean you should be doing the design.
3 days later, the same employee flagged the 176,000 pending bills to Revenue Services staff, writing, here is the report before we start vacant home tax bill this year. A supervisor responded, sounds like for vacant home tax to be viable long-term, declaration carryover is needed. Otherwise, 176,000 bills will yield 176,000 appeals.
Having these bills being sent out and with a recognition that there could be some challenges, I think one would have assumed that there would have been some oversight.
2 days after that, a manager in Revenue Services wrote, there are 176,817 bills being issued, requesting permission to get them printed. The acting director confirmed approved to proceed. There were so many bills that staff approved 3 shifts of overtime at the printing center to get them all done. They were sent out and the outrage ensued.
Is this a case where staff should have brought this up the flagpole, informed your office?
Or informed the city manager's office or CFO? Yes, there's no doubt about that. The design was flawed. The staff made a mistake, bad mistake, but I'm fixing it.
By April 5th, the city's chief financial officer sent an email to the mayor and members of council. I sincerely apologize for the situation that you and your staff are experiencing as a result of a vacant home tax process that isn't working, vowing that next year would be better. Natalie Johnson, CTV News.
2 men are in hospital following an industrial accident in North York. Police were called to the area of North York Boulevard and Yonge Street around the noon hour after receiving reports of 2 men who fell from 6-meter-tall scaffolding, a deck. Both men were transported to a trauma center with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The Ministry of Labor is expected to be notified.
A top-secret mystery has surrounded Parliament.
Yesterday, a National Security Committee found intelligence some politicians knowingly participated in foreign interference. Now there are calls to identify them. CTV's Judy Trin reports.
An insider threat looms here. According to a bombshell parliamentary report, some MPs and senators are witting participants in foreign interference.
There's no way a member of parliament should be able to continue to work in this place if they are assisting another government in interfering with our democracy. That's just wrong.
The Prime Minister, cabinet ministers, and staff with top secret clearance know which politicians CSIS has identified, but are refusing to name names.
Today, I'm not going to address specific allegations or specific pieces of intelligence information.
The intelligence, which began as leaks, has turned into a flood of information revealed in a public inquiry and multiple security reports. One MP is alleged to have shared information with India,
and the leadership of the Liberal Party caucus,
while other politicians associated with the Toronto riding of Don Valley North at federal, provincial, and municipal levels have come under scrutiny. But the government is waiting for police to take the lead.
It needs to be law enforcement that takes the steps and takes the actions. The actual enforcement actions can't be politicized.
The National Security Report released yesterday described unethical and even illegal behavior, including communicating with embassies to help mobilize support from the diaspora, accepting funds from proxies, and providing privileged information to foreign operatives. Yet the threats are being allowed to fester.
There's a serious reputational cost for Canada vis-a-vis our allies. Do our allies in the Five Eyes and other countries with which we share intelligence really think we're a serious, credible country if our governing party, or other parties for that matter, won't remove from their caucuses people who are sharing information?
Analysts point out there's also another risk. These foreign interference allegations mainly involve China and India. Without naming names, politicians with ties to those countries could be treated with suspicion by their colleagues and constituents. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
The country's budget watchdog says the federal government is hiding a report showing most Canadians pay more due to the carbon tax than what they get back. Parliamentary Budget Officer Yves Giroux believes his office is under a gag order to not talk about the report showing a negative impact for most Canadians. Giroux says he and his staff have seen the government's impact analysis, but have been told explicitly not to disclose it or reference it. Here's what the Deputy Prime Minister had to say today.
Our government is absolutely confident that the price on pollution returns more money to the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians. It is, and that there's just kind of common sense to that. This is a revenue neutral measure. The federal budget doesn't get a penny from the price on pollution. All the money that is collected goes back to Canadians.
The PBO published a note in April admitting its economic analysis of the consumer carbon price incorrectly included the impact of the industrial carbon price. It plans to publish an updated analysis in the fall.
The Auditor General says organizations responsible for protecting Canadians from cybercrime lack the capacity and the tools to do so.
These organizations have neither the capacity nor the tools to effectively fight cybercrime as cyber attacks grow in number and sophistication. Part of the issue is the federal government's siloed and disconnected approach. We found breakdowns in response, coordination, tracking, and information sharing between and across federal organizations.
Karen Hogan's review looked at the RCMP, the Communications Security Establishment Cyber Spy Agency, and the CRTC. In response, the Trudeau government says it will soon launch a new strategy to protect economic interests from cyber threats.
Meanwhile, the Auditor General found federal organizations often broke policies and procedures when awarding contracts to consulting firms. McKinsey & Company received $209 million in federal contracts over 12 years. Hogan says 9 out of 10 government departments and agencies failed to follow their own policies and guidelines on at least one contract that went to McKinsey. So did 8 out of 10 Crown corporations. A Treasury Board report last year found no evidence of political interference.
India's election commission says Prime Minister Narendra Modi's coalition has won a majority in parliament. Modi's National Democratic Alliance won 286 seats, more than the 272 seats needed to secure a majority. He had already claimed victory today, even though his party won fewer seats than expected. It will be Modi's third term in office. More than 640 million votes were cast in the marathon election held over 6 weeks in the world's largest democracy. The turnout averaged 66%.
Thursday marks 80 years since D-Day, when a massive invasion force stormed the beaches of Normandy in France.
The largest amphibious assault in history eventually turned the tide of the Second World War. And as we approach the anniversary, CTV's Joy Malbin is at Juno Beach, where Canadian soldiers landed on June 6th, 1944.
I'm standing on the beach here in Normandy, France. Juno Beach, the very place where 80 years ago Canadian and Allied forces landed, facing down enemy gunfire in order to free Europe from Nazi occupation. And on this beach, 15,000 Canadian troops played a critical role. It was a massive human endeavor, using the forces of 3 nations to break through Hitler's Atlantic Wall. I mean, just imagine airplanes and bombers in the sky, ships and boats out to sea, and soldiers storming the beach to free them. And to commemorate it all, world leaders, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, along with U.S. President Joe Biden, where Americans fought on Omaha and Utah Beach. And King Charles will be here to commemorate the British forces who fought on Gold and Sword Beach just that way. Those in their 90s, veterans, older, making one more trip back to Normandy to remember what was won and what was sacrificed that day. For them, it will likely be the last time they return to the beaches. As one historian put it, soon human memory will slip into history. And this week, on the 80th anniversary, it's a chance to remember the people who helped save the world. Joy Malbin, CTV News, Juno Beach.
Coming up on CTV News, a major step forward in Ottawa's efforts to support Canadian broadcasting. The CRTC releases the framework to ensure contributions from streaming services like Netflix and Spotify.
And I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, the cycling season has arrived and many people are out on their bicycles. If that's you, make sure yours doesn't get stolen. You may need additional insurance. One man just had his $4,000 e-bike taken. All of that story, that's just ahead.
And it's been a warm start to the month, but as we step in towards the end of this week, a bit of a cold front and a cool down coming. An area of cooler air is going to settle in as we step in towards our Friday. Coming up, your full forecast, and stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
Now that the warm weather has arrived, many more cyclists are out on city streets and bike paths in the GTA.
Unfortunately, the theft of bikes soars in the summer months, and if you have an expensive one, you may need additional insurance. Pat Foran explains on Consumer Alert. Pat.
Thanks, Michelle and Nathan. There are bikes that cost thousands of dollars, especially e-bikes that give you an added boost when riding. Most home and tenant insurance policies only cover bikes up to $1,000. A senior who just had his e-bike stolen was surprised to find that out.
Ross, I take it you like bikes.
I like bikes, yes.
You got bikes everywhere in this place.
Ross, Derry of Oshawa, started cycling at the age of 55 and fell in love with it, biking 30 kilometers at a time. Now he's 88 years old and recently decided to get an e-bike to help him up hills.
The e-bike is a massive help for the seniors on the hill.
He was looking forward to another summer of cycling, but his Opus Connect e-bike, which he paid $4,000 for, was just stolen.
If you see my bike, call the police. It might be mine.
The e-bike was in his apartment complex's garage, locked onto a bike rack attached to his car.
I thought with this on there, there was no hope of them getting it off of the rack, but they did.
Derry had tenant insurance, so he knew his bike was covered, but he was shocked to find out, even though he paid $4,000 for his e-bike, his coverage was limited to $1,000.
If I had read it and seen I needed extra insurance, I may have got replacement value instead of $1,000 for a $4,000 bike.
It's not just bikes. Most insurance policies have limitations on collectibles, artwork, and jewelry unless you pay an additional premium known as a rider.
It's like a mini insurance policy inside your big insurance policy, covering that one specific item.
Many policies also have a limit for cash of $500 to $1,500 in the event of a fire or robbery.
So if you're a cash keeper, you might want to consider putting in a safe deposit box rather than in your home.
With bicycle theft an ongoing problem, if you have an expensive one, you're advised to check your policy. Derry says he's not sure if he'll buy another e-bike or if his cycling days are over.
If it's not safe in my garage, I'd have to bring it back up here every time I used it.
And even if you pay additional insurance to cover an expensive bike, artwork, or diamond ring, there may still be deductibles you have to pay. Every policy is different, so you have to check yours to know exactly what kind of coverage you have. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
Well, a bike ride sure would be nice at this time of the day because you get that breeze from cruising, and I imagine it's a lot more comfortable on the water as well.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking if you're doing any outdoor activities tonight, maybe stay hydrated. It's still humid out there.
Listen, that he can sneak up on you. And even though we didn't have a brilliantly sunny day, the UV index was still really high. Like, you still have to put on sunscreen even if it's a cloudy day or you're sitting in the shade because the sun is just that strong. As we head into the evening, Nathan's right, hydration is going to be key because it stays hot. We are well above seasonal into the afternoon, the evening, and the overnight hours today and tomorrow. Weather is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train. Now, we've seen a little bit of sunshine here and there throughout the day today, but the real dominant story has been the heat, even prompting some special weather statements in towards eastern Ontario. The criteria for a heat warning is different from northern Ontario to southern Ontario to eastern Ontario and into that southwestern corner. So we do not reach the criteria yet, but we are getting close. We're at 26 here in the city. It feels like 32. Even portions of northern Ontario still feeling that heat. We have a big ridge in the jet stream, so warm air kind of overtaking the entire province. Tonight, we should be at 13. We'll sit at 19. It is really, really warm out there. We're not really seeing any reprieve from this until later in the week. Temperature-wise, as we head in towards this evening, it is going to be warm. That carries into the day tomorrow, and we're looking at a daytime high a little closer to seasonal, but we're still dealing with those humidex values into the 30s. With warmer air at the surface, a cold front coming in, so cooler air aloft and winds kind of changing direction. It's the perfect recipe for pop-up showers and thunderstorms, and that's what we have on the way. Not a wash, but it is going to be unsettled as we head from Wednesday night through to the end of the week, thanks to these two systems making their way in. For the rest of our evening, though, it is beautiful. If you wanted to get out for a bike ride, a walk, just to enjoy your evening, maybe eat outside. Into the day tomorrow, a little cloud cover to start. We see the chance of showers threatening into the afternoon, but a lot of that breaks up before it gets to us here in the downtown core and in the GTA, and then we do have some late day sunshine. It's overnight where we see the first kind of waves of shower activity and the risk of thunderstorms, but it moves out just in time for that morning commute for many, and it'll be quite sunny. But into the afternoon, again, those pop-up showers are going to kind of just plague us as we head in towards the end of the week. So by no means is it a wash as we head towards the end of the week, but just keep your umbrella handy. Temperature-wise, again, it is really warm as we head throughout the day today into your Thursday. We get a little bit closer. After the cold front pushes through, we dip below seasonal as we head in towards your Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, at least for the daytime highs. The overnight lows actually get back to where we should be. Don't let the icons overwhelm you when it comes to all the rain. We are looking at the chance of showers off and on from Wednesday right through to Sunday, but it is not a downpour all day, every day. Just keep the umbrella handy. I know it's a busy weekend. There's lots of festivals going on in and around the GTA, so just get out, enjoy them, but bring the umbrella. We don't really get too much of a break into Monday and Tuesday of next week, but overall, we're kind of getting into that time of year where we see those pop-up showers just becoming a thing. Nathan, I'll send it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Jess. Also tonight, one-on-one with co-creator of Mayor of Kingstown, Hugh Dillon. The Canadian star sharing insight on the third season and the return of Jeremy Renner, who cheated death following a tragic accident.
The U.S. has reported its third human case of avian flu in a Michigan farm worker.
Health reporter Pauline Chan explains why health experts are concerned about this case.
The first two farm workers infected with the H5N1 bird flu suffered relatively mild cases, experiencing primarily eye irritations.
Two in Michigan and one in Texas. The first two cases were, based on reports, mild. There was a conjunctivitis associated with this. The third case appears to be more ill, and has respiratory symptoms.
That means coughing, and the problem with that is it could mean a more transmissible form of the virus. All 3 cases were in dairy farm workers who recovered, but Dr. Isaac Bogosh says avian flu has hit other species hard.
We know that this virus has the potential to cause very, very severe symptoms in many mammalian hosts. There's been cats that had terrible symptoms and died. Sea lions as well.
And while it is known as a respiratory illness, it does affect other parts of the body as well.
The lungs, but they can impact the cardiovascular system. Sometimes they can cause strokes, and they can precipitate heart attacks. They can certainly impact the kidney, the liver. So it's the brain. There's certainly well documented neurologic manifestations of these infections. So they are multi-system infections.
Bogosh says so far the virus does not seem to spread very easily in humans, but
it's foolish to think that there are only 3 cases. There's very likely to be more cases that are going undetected because they're not screening a lot of people. Based on some of the reports, it looks like only about 50 or so people have been tested.
Canada is monitoring its milk supply for signs of the H5N1 influenza virus, and Texas has begun monitoring its wastewater for signs of bird flu, something Bogosh says is inexpensive and could easily be done in Canada. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
Foreign online streaming services operating in Canada will be required to contribute money to support the domestic broadcasting industry. Services like Netflix and Spotify are being told they must put 5% of their annual Canadian profits into a fund. It will be devoted to producing local TV and radio news, Indigenous content, French language content, and content created by those with a diverse background. The CRTC says the fund is expected to inject about $200 million into Canada's broadcasting system every year. The measure was introduced with the help of a law passed last year.
Hugh Dillon has graced our screens for years, from Hardcore Logo to Flashpoint to Yellowstone. But Mayor of Kingstown is personal for him.
The show has returned for a 3rd season, but there was some doubt it would return at all after an accident almost took the life of its star. CTV's Andrea Case reports.
They came after us. You needed bullseye. Let's take the fight to them.
Hugh Dillon is happy to talk about the latest season of The Mayor of Kingstown. That's because he wasn't even sure there would be a season 3 after star Jeremy Renner almost died when his snowplow rolled over him in January 2023.
I went to see him, and I knew kind of instinctively when he texted me, and he kind of was profane and sent the picture in his neck brace, but he's also saying some funny stuff in it. And I thought then he's going to be okay because he's got that humor. And if you have that, I worked at the hospital for sick children for 5 years as an orderly, and I know humor and pain, and you need to have that to, get out of whatever you're in.
A year later, Renner was back on set. Dillon is from Kingston, Ontario, or Kingstown. As a kid, music, TV, and movies were his passion. He achieved fame in the band The Headstones in the 90s and is still a musician to this day.
I had wanted to do this since I was 17. It's like, and guys I grew up with had that same drive. Doug Gilmour played in the NHL. I used to play one-on-one hockey on a swamp at night with him, with nobody else. And there's a certain drive you have. Gord Downey's another one. It's like you have fire inside, and there are so many obstacles, and you just have to dodge them. And sometimes you're lucky, and sometimes you're not.
From childhood, the city's 9 penitentiaries held his attention, and as an adult, he knew there was a story there. He pitched the idea to his mentor, on screen and off, Oscar nominee Taylor Sheridan. They continue to work together on one of Sheridan's other hit shows, Yellowstone, and 3 years ago, they created Mayor of Kingstown.
Taylor called in early on and said, here's how we want to start, here's how we want to finish, what do you got? And I said, heroin and hand grenades. And he went, that's great, okay, let's go.
Dillon is a co-star and executive producer and occasional writer of the hit show. He says he's happy to say there will be a season 4. Andrea Case, CTV News, Toronto.
After the break, he could help the Raptors rebound from a disappointing season. Leaside's own Zach Edey takes part of the team's pre-draft workout. A closer look at the 7'4" college superstar.
Kicking back with Kevin.
Kevin Hearn is keeping busy with the Bare Naked Ladies and project of his own, and we'll catch up with him for a casual conversation.
That's on CP24 Breakfast, where Toronto gets its everything every morning.
Kind of sweetest man you'll ever know. He wouldn't hurt a fly.
Updating our top stories, police have confirmed 61-year-old Delroy George Parks was the man shot and killed Sunday night during a mass shooting near North Albion Collegiate. A source close to the investigation says they believe the shooting was random, and the men who had been playing soccer earlier were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It's really tough on people, you know, like income haven't gone up as much. So they're really struggling to make ends meet.
Many Canadians are hoping the Bank of Canada will lower interest rates tomorrow morning, which would bring relief for mortgage holders. Over the next 2 years, 76% of all mortgages in Canada are up for renewal.
It's been over 5 decades of gross neglect, denial, and disregard for Grassy Narrow's people.
And the Grassy Narrow First Nation has sued both the provincial and federal government, alleging their treaty rights have been violated through ongoing mercury poisoning.
To keep up to date day and night through our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca, and by downloading the CTV News app. And if you have a news tip, photos, or video of breaking news, let us know.
On the markets, the Canadian dollar is down 1/5 cent to end the day at 73.12 US. American benchmark oil lost 85 cents to close at 73.37 a barrel. And the TSX Composite Index dropped 138 points to end the day at 21,978.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
Shohei Ohtani's former interpreter has pleaded guilty to bank and tax fraud. Ippei Mitsuhara admitted stealing nearly $17 million from the Dodgers superstar to pay off sports betting debts. The bank fraud charge carries a maximum of 30 years in prison. The false return charge on taxes carries a sentence of up to 3 years. He'll be sentenced in late October and is also required to pay Ohtani restitution.
San Diego Padres infielder Tucupita Mercado has been banned from baseball for life for betting on the sport. MLB said Mercado placed 387 bets totaling more than $150,000 in 2022, and from last July through to November with a legal sports book. He became the first active player in a century banned for life because of gambling. The league has also suspended 4 others for 1 year. Each of them wagered under $1,000.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
The Raptors were getting an up-close look at some of the next generation of NBA stars at a pre-draft workout today.
Among those taking part, a Toronto-born college star who remembers being part of the celebrations when the team won their championship. CTV's Raheem Ladani reports.
Keep looking up, way up, and eventually you'll see 7'4" Zach Edey.
When he gets in the paint, opens those arms, and just like, it's not really not much you can do about foul him.
That's generally the reaction people have when they see the 22-year-old up close. He's at the Raptors practice facility for a pre-draft workout. And being from Toronto, it's a pretty special invitation.
I remember driving around downtown, after they won the championship, downtown was going crazy, and I'd be in here working out, it's real cool.
Edey made a name for himself in college, leading Purdue to the NCAA final earlier this year. He was also named the National Player of the Year the past 2 seasons. But the kid from Leaside High School still keeps in close touch with his childhood friends.
Growing up in Leaside, all my buddies, everyone, I got to see them all. Still stay in contact. They came out to the Final Four. They came out to my senior night.
The Raptors are looking to rebound from a disappointing season after missing the playoffs, and they'll have an opportunity to bolster their lineup with the 19th and 31st picks in the upcoming draft.
It's not so much about what to do with that pick as much as, we're just in a good position to hopefully get a really good player.
Inside the OVO practice facility, there are also 2 other young Canadians trying to make a big impression. Scarborough's Emmanuel Miller.
It's insane to think about because a couple years ago, it was insane to think there was a couple Canadians in the league, right? And now to see top Canadians going through this pre-draft process on our home soil with one another, it's amazing.
And Montreal's Tyrese Samuel, who may need to brush up on his French.
Felt like I'm at home. Like, you know, I got family here, so it was great.
Français un petit peu.
Ouais, français?
Ouais, s'il te plaît.
But I'm not like really good at it right now. I can't.
All three of Edie, Miller, and Samuel have the potential to have their names called in this year's NBA draft, which is being held in Brooklyn, New York, starting on June 26th. Raheem Ladani, CTV News.
Nice to see they remember where they came from, these rising stars. Tell us about the weather. It's hot.
It's hot. That's it, guys. No, I'm kidding. It's going to be warm today, tomorrow, and then we do have a bit of a cool down coming. So there is reprieve on the way. If you don't like the heat, you don't have to get out of the kitchen. Just turn the AC on or open the window. Temperature-wise, right now, we do still have a humidex value into the 30s. So just be careful if you're heading out this evening. The good news is by Friday, we do cool down. We just have some messy weather on the way. So just keep the umbrella handy. Not a wash, but unsettled for sure. And a reminder, the new Lotto 649 with 2 big jackpots to be won on 1 ticket Wednesdays. Classic jackpot is $5 million. And the new Gold Ball jackpot is $60 million. You can head to olg.ca for more information.
Thank you, Jess. Be sure to join Omar Sachedina tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Zarada Allman with our next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and all of us at CTV News, thank you for watching and have a good night.